Well, I guess you'd know. Whether you tell us is a bit of a question.
Banner and I were doing research.
That would affect the team.
That would end the team. Isn't that the mission? Isn't that the why we
Spec.
So we can end the
Spec.
so we get to go home?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we got to ask ourselves a question: why do we spec? Now, this is a video that I wanted to do after a certain book hit the recent cover price top of the charts and the CBSI top of the charts, namely, What If number 18, What If Doctor Strange was a disciple of Dormammu? Now, one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to talk about this book is not to do a victory lap, because this is a book that I talked about in a previous video, speculating on this thing before the What If show came out. But to me, it just sort of reminded me as to why I personally like to do speculation. And in this video, I'm going to talk about that. But before I get into the topic for today, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do one of those things, I would appreciate it. But let us set the stage a little bit with this What If number 18. So then I can kind of lead us into, this discussion of, what are some of the pros of doing speculation? Because, as we all know, speculation is sort of a dirty word, I think, within our hobby. And while I do think that there are a lot of arguments as to why speculation is a negative thing in comic book collecting, I do think that, sometimes we need to extend an olive branch to the other side of the aisle and talk about, some of the positive things that can come out of speculation within the comic book hobby. But we'll get to that in a second, because we have to first talk about What If number 18. Of course, if you guys remember, this is the book right here, What If Doctor Strange Were a Disciple of Dormammu? Now, I made a video all the way back, say, 4 or 5 months ago, talking about discussing which comic books could get hot for the What If show, Spec and Invest MCU. And in this video right here, which I pulled up, is me talking about this particular book as one of the reasons why I think it could have gotten hot in the market. And namely because what we saw in the trailers for What If was that there was going to be some kind of evil Doctor Strange, or some kind of Doctor Strange dabbling with the dark arts. And this was sort of the What If book that kind of related to that character. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person to have speculated on this book. Even a broken watch is right twice a day. But I do think it's pretty cool that, here we are 5 months ago, essentially, when we were talking about this book with regards to What If. At the time, it was a, $5 book on eBay. Maybe after shipping, you had to pay 10, but you could probably find it in an LCS for 5 easily. And then now we flash forward to, today, where this is the #1 book, at least on Cover Price's list last week. And then also on the CBSI, it is the #1 book on it this week. And the reason for that is because, we're getting the Multiverse of Madness trailer. We saw Evil Doctor Strange. It's funny how Evil Doctor Strange was in the What If show, and maybe this book kind of had a little bit of an uptick, but really it's only until we got him in the live action MCU that this thing is really seeing the light of day. But let me just kind of point out some things here. So like I mentioned before, it was a $5 book before. Now raws are going around the $53 range. We had a high of a CGC 9.6 sell for $139. And if we go over to the CBSI Hot 10 list, shout out to Ben for putting the list together. If we look at the #1 book, which is What If number 18, here Ben states was $10 and now is 60 plus. I still don't understand the fascination with these types of books where the character may be in a movie, but ultimately is going to be a one-off and everyone knows it. And that might definitely be true. I mean, this is definitely a book that, for me, I'm never going to tell you guys what I think you should buy. I'm never going to tell you guys how you should value certain things. If you value this book at, say, $50, $60, and that's okay for you to spend that money on it, then, more power to you. I mean, you're not going to see me spend $50 or $60 on this book, if that's any indication to you guys as to how I feel about the current prices. But with that said, the reason I'm highlighting this book and showing its surge into the #1 slot this week is simply due to the fact that I want to demonstrate that this is sort of like a good example of when speculating can be a very, very positive thing for us in the hobby. And I kind of wanted to give you guys, 5 reasons why I think speculation is a good thing for comic book collecting. And the first reason for that is definitely the most obvious one, and that's, of course, is going to be builds collection equity. Now, builds collection equity. So, we all know that comic book collecting is an extremely expensive hobby. I mean, it can be an extremely expensive hobby. I mean, certainly there's an affordable way to do it, but if you're someone out there who wants to eventually collect, big key books, or, acquire massive grails for yourself, it's going to take a lot of money to eventually get those books. And so one of the reasons I actually like speculation is one of the reasons why I like comic book collecting is that I actually think that this is one of the rare hobbies where you can constantly work at it and eventually build your way to a book that you actually want. And that's one of the cool things about speculating is that, say you rewind the clock, say 6 months ago or whatever, and you picked up a bunch of copies of this book for $5. And you could take those stack of books, sell them right now, and your $25 investment all of a sudden grew to $250. And all of a sudden now you have $250 to spend on whatever key book that you want in the market. And that's a really good way for comic book collectors who are on budgets, who don't have the means to buy massive books, and they can actually work their way up or build their way up to, something that they really, really want. And to me, I think that that's really, really awesome. I think that it evens the playing field for a lot of collectors. This is obviously Swaggle Comics and Games, right? So in games, this is something that I think is really important. Is like you don't want a pay to win system. You want a system in which players can actually work their way towards something or grind their way into an item that they really, really want, right? So for you gamers out there, I feel like this is an analogy that, also comes into play here with speculation of comic books. So that is one of the first reasons I think that speculation is actually good for comic book collectors. Now, the second reason I think that speculation is actually good for comic book collectors is that it actually forces you to read your comics. I mean, I think this is one of the best parts about speculation is that, once you start to think about, all the possibilities of what might be coming in the MCU or what might be coming next in comic books, is that what better way to be motivated to read something than for the sake of speculation. For me personally, one of the reasons why I love reading my comic books so much is that it gives me different ideas of books to talk about with you guys, or different ideas for speculation, or books to invest in, or characters that I think might tie into the MCU at some point. And so I think that that's really cool. A lot of, I feel like purist comic book collectors always talk about like, oh, you don't even read your books. Now it's all about, flipping things, et cetera, et cetera. Well, ironically, I think that speculating is one of the biggest motivators as to why people actually want to read their comic books. So that's one of the cool things about speculating is that, you find yourself, even if it's just for the chase of finding a book that's going to get hot or the chase of being able to flip something, you actually find yourself being really invested back into the hobby of reading when you are looking for books to speculate on. So that's another bonus, in my opinion, as to why speculation is a good thing for comic book collecting. The other thing I wanted to talk about with speculation is actually that it creates community engagement. This is one of the things that I think is, can be a negative. I mean, you guys could be thinking to yourselves, it does create a lot of community engagement. There's a lot of people who do not like speculation, and they might leave you a mean comment here and there. But overall, I think for the most part, the community engagement that it creates is a very positive thing. Because again, it doesn't have to be about flipping things and getting, massive returns on all of your books. Sometimes it's just really interesting to post a book on, say, Instagram or Facebook or whatever, comic collecting group you're in, and just say, hey, this is a really cool book because XYZ, or hey, I noticed this thing, relates to blah, blah, blah in the MCU. And then you get to have this discussion with people. I have a lot of people who send me messages all the time saying, hey, check out this book with regards to, this spec, maybe this is going to come to fruition. And that's really, really fun for me because I like hearing other people's ideas. It gets my wheels spinning, with regards to, what might be happening in the MCU and comic books. And then it pushes me further into wanting to read more and more and more. So I think that that's one of the other pros of comic book speculation is that it creates the community engagement. And then you get to have all these interactions with fellow comic book collectors. The other thing that I think is really interesting about speculation is that it gives you new hunting targets. That's definitely one of the cool things about speculating. I mean, I'm sure you guys have had the experience where, you finish your certain goals, or maybe you've finished collecting a certain run, or you don't know what to collect next. Well, at least the speculation kind of always is creating this velocity of movement within collecting, gives you new targets to go after, makes you dig into bins that maybe you were never going to dig in before. Maybe you had no interest in Doctor Strange or What If before this, but all of a sudden, the speculation juices are flowing and you're thinking to yourself, oh, maybe I can find that, certain Doctor Strange book, and you find yourself digging in that section, and that can lead you down new paths and a new wormhole of comic book collecting. So I think that that's actually a side benefit to the speculation game. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, of course, is the sweet dopamine hit that you're always going to feel for different reasons. It doesn't have to be the sweet dopamine hit that you get because you are right in a speculation, but it could just be the sweet dopamine hit that you get when you find that book that you think might be hot, or that other people start to connect the dots on a book that you discovered. So I think that that is ultimately one of the best things. And we all know that in comic book collecting, it's all about the hunt. I mean, the hunt is the most fun part about it. So having this sort of speculation to sort of drive you into different directions for that hunt ultimately is a good thing. But that is all I have for this video. That was me sort of just talking about some of the pros that come with speculation. I mean, I think speculation is often sort of a dirty word within our hobby, or there's people that have negative feelings towards speculation. And while I can definitely understand where they're coming from when they say that, one of the things that I kind of want to put out to you guys is talk about, some of the pros that come from speculating in comic books, but ultimately it can also lead collectors to very positive outcomes if they decide to dabble in speculating in certain ways. I mean, certainly one of the reasons I like speculating is for the 5 reasons I just stated with you guys, and it's made my collecting experience a lot more enjoyable. Anyways, that is all I have for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys enjoy speculation? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next video.